Welcome back to Spotlight. Today we are talking to the Republican candidates. One is an incumbent, the other is a challenger seeking the Pennsylvania House seat in the 100th Legislative District of Lancaster County. And on this segment is the challenger, candidate David Nissley. And David, welcome to this program today.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. It's an honor to be here, and this has been one of the best segments of your radio station over the years. I've always enjoyed it.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you believe you're the best candidate to be in the Pennsylvania House from the 100th District.
Well, I grew up here in Lancaster County. I grew up in the Paradise Gap area, and being born into a very conservative household and family that has always honored the Lord and has given us myself, particularly my siblings, a very biblical foundation. This has been a treasure in my life that I didn't know the depth of it until some of my later years. And so as I have been in business for 30 some years, my own business, and I've had the opportunity to sell that to my son, and this frees me up in a way to serve. And as we considered that a year ago, we were thinking, and then this idea came, and we decided we're going to take it. It's been a journey already. We have had a lot of fun, and it's been a pleasure meeting many of the voters. And the more I did this, the more I realized that God has given me a unique opportunity to serve this district and to get into Harrisburg. And I think I can bring a lot of skills from my past, from just what we call the real world. You know, I pastored for 6 years, helping a church get on the ground until we could afford a pastor. Having employees for over 30 years gives me a lot of real world experience. So that, I think, is what a lot of us really long for in Harrisburg and across government in general.
Of all the different issues before the citizens in the 100th Legislative District, what would you say is the top issue on their minds? I want you to identify that specific issue, and how would you address that issue if you became State Representative Dave Nissley?
Well, there's no doubt about it that the number one issue on people's minds and what they verbally expressed is election integrity. Now, that is a difficult issue. Our election system in Pennsylvania has radically changed in 2019 when they passed Act 77, and this bill has drastically changed how we do elections in Pennsylvania. What is more difficult, possibly, than fixing the law is restoring trust. Restoring trust is complicated because when trust is broken, then sometimes it takes time, sometimes it takes a change of leadership, but it's a very non-tangible aspect of this issue, election integrity. So I think, in my opinion, it's a multifaceted thing. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen in one election, but it is going to take a lot of hard work and goodwill from our leadership. And that's one of the things that would be top of mind for myself and others in Harrisburg.
Let's take a look at some other issues. Let's start off with, what is your position on abortion?
Well, obviously, as a Christian, I think that life is of utmost importance, and it's not accidentally that life is the first thing listed in our rights given by God. And without life, obviously, the rest of our rights and responsibilities don't matter here on earth. So personally, I think that when you look at this issue of life, you've got to focus on the principle. I think our party needs to focus on the principle of every issue, this one specifically. If we leave the principle of the issue, then we start talking a lot of variables, which are important, of course, but we got to focus on the principle. For myself, abortion obviously is wrong, and I think that life begins at conception. That's my personal opinion. I think science and the medicine backs that up, but it's obviously a touch-button issue, and I think for conservatives and believers, we solidly land on the same spot.
Let's talk about education funding. Pennsylvania's method of funding public education is in violation of the state constitution, according to the courts, and there's constant complaints over school property taxes. So how would you address those concerns, and what changes should be made to fund alternatives to traditional public schools?
Well, I've had the blessing with my children to not only use private schools, we have done some homeschooling, we have used public schools, and so obviously a lot of families have a lot of opinions about how to educate their children. That's the number one thing. I think that we need to expand choice. The most choice that parents have, the better. They're the best suited to make decisions for their own children. And when you talk about funding, it gets a little more complex because we have this antiquated system of property tax that deals with, specifically is for funding education in Pennsylvania. And people, while we're using the school system, they obviously have a vested interest in the school system to work well for their children. And then we have a large population in this district that never uses the public school system, and they're using private schools and homeschools. So there's just a lot of complexities with how we fund schools because it's an unbalanced sharing of the burden, if you will. And at the same time, most of us recognize that education is of utmost importance. So we can't strip funding without making provision for individuals, communities to take responsibility for their children. So complex for sure, very, very top of mind for all of us. It's going to take, again, a lot of will, and it will take effort for sure. We've had times in the past where we were very, very near to changing the funding from property tax to a consumption tax, which is a much more, if I dare to say, moral form of taxation. Instead of it being a value tax where it's taxing your value, it's taxing a consumption. That would certainly be an approach that I would support again if we could begin shifting that burden away from property tax. But again, it's complex because you're always dealing with the people that are currently using the public schools, and so they have a vested interest. So you have to handle that at the same time.
Speaking of taxes, folks in the 100th like to know where a candidate stands on taxation. Do you think we have enough taxes presently, or too many taxes at present, or not enough taxes at present?
Well, obviously, a large part of my campaign has been talking about limited government, and whenever government is involved, it needs funding. And so I'm, of course, of the opinion that we have too many taxes. And what's especially egregious, like I said, is things like inheritance tax and property tax that are really taxes on our value. And then the hidden taxes are something that I think are especially egregious as well and difficult because we're being taxed in ways we don't even realize. And so, yes, way too many taxes to make it a short answer.
The Shapiro administration would like to see legalization of recreational marijuana. Would you support or oppose such legalization, and why?
That's a fun subject. It's way too complex to get deep into it. But obviously, the state and the Democrats want to do this because of income stream. They want to have that money from taxation, and they also love controlling things. So for those two reasons alone, we should never touch it. And then there's a whole moral discussion, and we could go to lots of other states who have already done this. We could see the ramifications of doing it. So under the current ideas, I'd absolutely oppose it because it goes against limited government. Once again, it increases the size of government.
Many in the 100th district are gun owners. Where do you stand on the Second Amendment and the rights of Pennsylvania gun owners?
Well, as many of you know, I have the Gun Owners of America's endorsement. That is a very stringent and principled smaller group, and they is actually one of the most difficult interview or surveys that I filled out because they're very precise in their questioning. So I'm proud to have their endorsement, which just confirms that in this issue, I clearly understand the constitutional principle of Second Amendment. It's not there necessarily so we can go hunting, although that's a benefit of having guns, is that we can go hunting. But the Second Amendment is simply there because the founders understood that rights are from God, and for these rights to be protected, we needed to have the ability to protect ourselves and our families and our neighbors. That is a responsibility we have more than a right.
We have a little under 3 minutes remaining. The governor proposed recently an energy plan. What do you think of his proposal, and what type of plan would you support to provide safe and affordable energy to Pennsylvanians?
Energy is such a simple question from a limited government perspective. We need to make use of the energy in Pennsylvania. We have so much natural gas in Pennsylvania. It's one of the cleanest burning fuels that we have available, and it's just a no-brainer to free this up, give us back energy, independence in our country, in our state. So easy.
Okay, we got almost 2 minutes remaining. If citizens in the 100th District want to find out more about your campaign, how can they find out more?
Well, obviously our website is Nissley4PAA.com, and they can call us. I have a girl answering the phone, Elaine, and that number is 723-8373. She can direct them to me. Obviously, they can find our email address as well.
I'm going to throw this question at you. We've got about a minute and a half remaining. Should there be term limits for state law?
You know, there's 3 issues that are very obvious in the 100th District. It's election integrity, we're tired of career politicians, and we want limited government. I am self-limiting myself to 10 years or less in Harrisburg, and that is partially a pledge to you, the voter, but is also a statement to Harrisburg that I'm not going to come there and walk your career plank and then be manipulated into certain methods. I'm there to restore our Republican Party, to bring the principles in liberty, the principles of the Constitution. These are very important, and if we want true pluralism again, if we want our Republican Party restored, then this is important.
We have about 50 seconds remaining. In our closing moments, why ultimately should Republican voters in the 100th Legislative District cast their vote for Dave Nissley for the State House?
Well, if we want to bring energy, enthusiasm back to the party, we need to bring principles and courage. You cannot buy these things at the Dollar General. These are things that are in our hearts, but they're very contagious. So it's time that we bring some change. It's time that we bring these to Harrisburg and that we grow them.
Dave Nissley, who is a Republican candidate for the State House seat in the 100th Legislative District in Lancaster County, has been my guest on today's Spotlight. Dave, thank you for sharing your positions on the issues, and our very best to you in the final days of the campaign.
Thank you.